Have you ever noticed that some of the best ideas come from unexpected places? Your next breakthrough may come from a leader facing similar challenges, but in a completely different sector. Welcome to Chief Influencer. I'm your host, Anthony Shop. Join us as we explore how today's successful leaders inspire, influence, and connect with others. Chief Influencer is a production of Social Driver and the Communications Board, who have teamed up to spotlight how great leaders and communicators are making their impact in the world. This episode is brought to you by the George Washington University's College of Professional Studies. With in-person and online programs ranging from master's degrees in public relations strategy to certificate programs in digital communications, GW offers more than just the credentials to help working professionals get ahead. It prepares them to be leaders in their field. As a proud GW graduate myself, I can attest that faculty members combine academic rigor with real-world lessons that can't always be found in textbooks. Check out cps.gwu.edu for more information. Welcome to another episode of Chief Influencer. I'm your host, Anthony Shop. Today we're doing something a little different. Instead of diving into a single conversation with one guest, we're bringing you highlights and lessons learned from a few leaders, all on the subject of LinkedIn. You'll hear from Stephen Taylor, the president and CEO of the Arthritis Foundation, Johnny C. Taylor Jr., the president and CEO of SHRM, Emma Wade Smith, the former trade commissioner for North America and His Majesty's Consul General, and Allan Golston, the U.S. president of the Gates Foundation. They'll share how LinkedIn has impacted their ability to lead and influence. Let's dive in. I've seen how you really prioritize kind of engaging with your team. I know that, when you came into this role, the world looked a lot different from when you started your career. You have people who work remotely. You already were an organization that had folks across the country, but now, sometimes people may work from home. And I wonder if you could talk about some of the things that you did coming in as a leader and some of the things that, maybe you still do today to engage with that really important audience of the team members and the volunteers.
When I joined here and then became CEO, following that really difficult few years that the previous leadership staff had to really endure, I was fortunate, which does not sound wonderful to say fortunate, but fortunate to come in post-COVID with a brand new opportunity for me to really come in and start to bring together the team and bring everyone back together. So my first 30 days, I've told you this, is I met with all 165 staff of the organization within the first 30 days. And I came out with my 3 guiding principles that after I heard everything they had said, and really made sure that people knew I was there to listen, as well as help direct, but really listen first. And so, I believe in listening with my heart and with my mind, and then coming out with focus areas that were important to the organization. I also, feel I want to be part of the organization. So I changed some structures in the office. I moved my office up front by the lobby so that people would always pass my office. I'm a people person anyways, as you well know. I like to be in the center of things, but I like to be able to wave to people as they walk by. Not that everybody was coming back to the office. We were still only back 1 day a week, and we're still really only back 1 day a week. But it was important for them to feel that accessibility since we'd been closed. And really, before I became CEO, no one was coming back to the office. So we weren't even really open. So there was never that community again. And in order to create that community, I felt that being upfront would help, since not everybody's there every day. And I'm surely not there every day myself, between my travel and other things. So it was, I think that showed just the idea that we wanted to create that community, even though we're spread across the country. And then, as you well know, Anthony, because you've been help with me and my organization, is through Social Driver, is, engaging our staff and volunteers using social media platforms, and myself being engaged in there, especially in LinkedIn, commenting, posting, sharing stories, as well as making sure that people know I'm reading what they're posting, and never faking a post. I'm not a big believer in fake posts. I used to call Facebook fake book, because I think sometimes people make up a exaggerated story a little bit about their life. And also sometimes people hire people to respond online, and people know when it's not you. And they know when it's not your genuine voice. And so I take the time to respond. As I've told you, it's sometimes not perfect. I'll have a typo because I'm in a plane taking off, or I'm in an airport, or a shuttle bus to pick up a rental car, and I'm commenting, but they know it's me because they know my voice and they know it's not going to be necessarily always perfect. But I want to make sure I don't respond on everything, but I like to respond so people know I'm engaged.
As we learned from Stephen Taylor, authenticity is key when engaging on LinkedIn. Let's hear what Johnny C. Taylor Jr. has to say about the importance of being genuine on social media.
Authenticity. You've got to be you at all times. And the people who I've even seen some people who have significant followers, millions of followers, but you don't know who they are. And frankly, I'm not so convinced they know who they are. So they put on a face online and that person shows up. Over time, that person will be figured out because it's kind of hard to not be you consistently. And so my advice to those leaders is it's okay to be you. We have to give people permission to be authentically themselves. And that person is the person who should show up on social media. Or if I'm at an event and I see the person, they should say, there's no space between the Johnny I'm seeing online.
These leaders do an excellent job of bridging the gap between digital and real life, living authentically regardless of the platform. Now let's hear from Allan Golston about his evolving relationship with LinkedIn and how he uses it to create meaningful connections.
The primary digital channel that I prefer and resonates with me most is LinkedIn. And for a number of reasons around audience. And, my colleagues will tell you and support this statement that I've had an evolving relationship with these social media platforms of like, oh my God, that's another thing I have to respond to. I have email, I have all sorts of other things to really both figuring out how to integrate it into my practice in authentic ways, but also to leverage it as another way to not only be influenced, but also to influence. And LinkedIn has been just really great because, it's an example for me personally where it was important to me to find a way to have a two-way exchange as much as you can. You can't do it entirely, but to say, okay, I'm doing these posts and my colleagues and I'm incorporating stories and I'm working to be authentic, but I also see that people are responding or are asking me questions. And how do I honor that someone's taking the time to read the post and comment on it, or even ask something like a direct message? And how do I honor that? And that's important to me just in terms of my leadership practice, regardless of the media. And so I've been on this journey to figure out how I do that and how I have that reciprocity. And I had an example recently that really struck me as why this was so important to me. And it's really related to this idea that parents are really wrestling with their families and students are wrestling with their families about how to make these choices and how to afford a college education and where to go. And after one of the posts I did, a mother in Texas reached out to me with a very thoughtful message saying, I have a really talented student. We always knew he was going to go to college. He is very interested in these fields. And I'm really trying to figure it out. Do you go in-state? But that's not necessarily where he wants to go. But where he wants to go has a lot of implications, including financial implications. And she laid out this very thoughtful message, both just giving me the background of her personal story, but also in many ways asking for advice and at some level help. And the reason that exchange was important is one of the most important decisions that influences a post-secondary outcome, successfully or not, is what's called matching. Does the student choose an institution that is well matched to not only their interests, but how they learn, the community they need in order to be successful and to thrive? And in many cases, when students aren't successful, it's not because they can't do the academic work, it's because the matching didn't work. And if they're matched in another setting, they can soar and thrive. But if they're matched in a setting that's misaligned, they don't succeed oftentimes. So this is a really consequential decision. And I responded to her because I do try to take the time to read all of the kind of responses, the direct messages, try to sort out the kind of blast emails or prompts that come in my inbox. And it's quite a bit of volume. But I saw that and I took the time to respond. And it influenced me to ask the question, okay, how are we in this ecosystem getting information out to families and individuals? And do we think that that's the best that we could possibly do? So I looked for where we and our partners do it. I asked a couple of colleagues in and outside of the foundation that I had an opportunity to connect with. And it was just really an important lesson about how the reciprocity of influence is really important. And while it's hard to do it on a digital platform, if you have a lot of volume, it isn't impossible. And that my instincts of wanting that a more reciprocal influence relationship, at least for my own leadership practice and the work that I do, seems to be the right instinct. So that's just another example of how I think about it. And, you know, that example will always stick with me because that's what we're about, having impact measured at human level outcomes. And that's an example, outcome at a time. That's how you get impact. And if you can aggregate that into systems level change, you can really have a really significant impact in the world.
Learning how to properly utilize social media platforms and create connections is something these leaders truly understand. Let's hear how Emma Wade Smith learned how to engage with her audience on LinkedIn.
I'm an enthusiast. And so my natural instinct getting onto LinkedIn is to sort of like so much stuff, because actually there's a terrific feed that comes through from business leaders and others right across the world. I've learned over time that less can be more. My team here in particular have really helped me to appreciate that. And so, you know, it's recognizing the power of the power of a personal comment, and actually probably even more important than all of that, the importance of engaging in a conversation so that this isn't just a sort of megaphone moment in, you know, one directional traffic. It's, for me, the bits that I love most. So when you can see people engaging and commenting and responding. So that for me is probably the learning I've been on. You know, don't like everything, be sort of quite choosy, I guess, and kind of use that moment wisely, but also to engage in a conversation as much as that's possible to do. I think the other thing is actually to try stuff. And I think that, you know, LinkedIn has brought in a number of innovations over the last few years, and its users have also innovated within the platform. I try to do as much sort of video or imagery as possible because I think that's an increasingly effective way to get people's attention and sort of hold it for a few seconds at least while we try to impart some knowledge.
It's clear that these leaders understand the power of engagement on LinkedIn. Not only do they share their own content, but they also actively participate in other conversations. Let's return to Johnny C. Taylor for his insights on the importance of recognizing others on the platform.
One of the things that I think many people might observe about your LinkedIn, you know, you can look in and see somebody's activity beyond just what they post. And you'll wish happy birthday to somebody who works at SHRM, or you'll comment on somebody who won an award. And I want to just hear a little bit about that, because sometimes people think social media is just about posting what you want to say, rather than joining other people's conversations and kind of giving them a pat on the back. Right, so the one thing about social media, it's so big, right? As I said, I'm blessed, really, really blessed to have a 500,000 and growing audience. But people want to be seen, even in the virtual and digital world. And so if I know it's your birthday, for example, just to shout it out, if I see someone who presented at a conference and I say, hey, I heard you really nailed it from the other comments, I didn't have to be there. It's amazing how you can lift someone's day and their spirits by seeing them, literally, and recognizing them. And the most satisfying part of this gig is when I do it for someone I don't even know. And I send them a note and they write back and say, I was having a really bad day, until you call that out. And just randomly doing it gives me such, you can probably sense, I got really heavy satisfaction out of it. And I also know that I made someone, you don't know what people are going through, my friends. You don't know who's a step away from making a very different decision in their life because they're in a bad place. And just saying kindness, when we talk about kindness and seeing people, that's one, I think, the upside of social media, if you do it responsibly, is you actually see people and get their feedback. Now, let me just say this. There are times when they're pretty mean on social media. I mean, social media can get pretty darn dark, and what we try to do on occasion is just to lift it up. So it's okay for us to disagree. I gave a talk just recently with the governor of Utah, and he has this great phrase, disagree better. So the notion that we aren't going to disagree with people is insane. Of course you are. Our diversity is our strength, and diverse people will see things differently by definition. But how can we do it better? And that's part of, again, the messaging. So when you ask, tying back to your earlier question, I'm talking to everyone. I'm talking to my employees. I want to make sure that we have a civil workplace and that you treat people with dignity and respect. I'm talking to people who don't work for us. I'm talking to our members. I'm talking to members down the street in Washington, D.C., on the U.S. Capitol. We're saying we all owe it to ourselves as society members to be better at this existence that we call human. Our life as we know it.
The theme of using LinkedIn to combat isolation and build community is echoed by Steve Taylor. Let's hear his perspective on how the virtual world impacts engagement.
The virtual world's real, and it really is another reason it inspires me to comment on LinkedIn and be involved, is the virtual world has put everyone in their home offices, including myself today. We're all in our homes, we're working alone. And so I read a book, and I believe, I don't want to quote the wrong person, but I believe it was a Brene Brown book, but they talked about how everyone says they're exhausted. But really what that is possibly in many people, loneliness kind of coming out as exhaustion. You're alone, you're working alone, you don't have that inspiring conversations, you don't get engaged as much as you were when you're walking down the hall, having conversations by the water cooler or coffee pot. And people aren't stopping in and interrupting you in your day to keep you engaged. And so loneliness kind of wears on people. And so I've been really at the organization since I read that last year, really trying to get people to figure out how we engage more with people, especially the ones that are really alone in some of our markets, all alone. They work in their home, they don't have other staff, and even in their market, is making sure that loneliness isn't there. And that's what inspires me to really comment and take the time to engage as much as I can. I can't comment on everything for all the staff or volunteers, but once in a while for them to know that I've seen what they've written, that I appreciate it. I either cheer them on, thank them for their hard work, whatever it might be, but that they've been seen and they are appreciated. I also do other things. I'll see something on LinkedIn and I'll go to Teams chat and send the person at Teams chat. I don't always comment on LinkedIn, but making sure that those people know that they've been seen by leadership. I encourage my senior leaders. As you know, we put our senior staff through a training with you to make sure they understood how important this is, because it's the new day and the new age of how we need to create community and make sure people are engaged.
Making time for LinkedIn engagement can be challenging for busy leaders. Allan Golston shares his approach to integrating LinkedIn into his daily routine.
It started with me not being in the mindset of all or nothing. And I'm very goal-oriented. People know about me and have, high standards of performance for myself and the work that we do. And I went into it as I have to answer all of them or I'm failing and not succeeding. And I got to now get it right the next time. And I kind of moved away from that to both hold those standards, but also to have, I'll just say, grace for myself. And I think when I came to that kind of next step in my perspective on how to tackle this, I learned to say, okay, well, think about the choices and the habits. So, instead of when you're in a taxi to the airport, just looking at just news, read the news and maybe take 10 minutes to go on LinkedIn and see what's happening. And oftentimes there's something that I feel like I need to respond to, and then I take the time to do it. And I don't get through all of them in that 10-minute time frame or 25-minute time frame, but it's progress. And so I just learned to kind of fit it in and to just include it in kind of the menu set of things that I go through as I kind of go about my day or go about my, weekend or go about my commute time. And that's working for me.
Johnny C. Taylor emphasizes the importance of authenticity and broad messaging on LinkedIn. Let's hear his thoughts on reaching diverse audiences through the platform.
The world has told you that women do this, men do this, black people do this, white people do this, straight people do this, gay people. Like, we think that when we're messaging, we want to message for the broadest of audiences because there's dignity in work. With the exception of people who are born trust fund babies, at the end of the day, we kind of have to work. So if you've got to do it, you've got to find a way to do it in a dignified way such that you get something out of it. So our audience is intentionally very broad. And it's actually very satisfying. I'm going down to Morehouse College, an HBCU, all men's HBCU down in Atlanta, to teach a course because some of their students heard us talking about on one of my many digital appearances how to be all that you can be, stealing from the U.S. military line, and said, it's okay if you go to college, it's okay if you don't go to college, it's okay. Like, there's so many ways to maximize your human potential and actually find dignity in work. So they called me. That wasn't my intended audience. When I went out and said, let's deliver a message for black men in Atlanta, Georgia, Morehouse College, it was a broad message of you really can chart your own course to success. And it resonated.
Emma Wade Smith shares how crucial it is to actively engage on LinkedIn and have that human approach to foster new connections and relationships. It obviously is a different, animal that when you actually are logging in and liking and that's been your approach. So can you talk about the importance of that? And if you had a colleague, maybe a peer of yours say, I'm thinking of getting on LinkedIn like you, I'm just going to have, a person on my team just totally run it for me. I'm not going to have the app on my phone. I'm not going to look at it. Would that work? What would you say to that leader to encourage them to take a more hands-on approach like you have?
Yeah, I could understand why that's tempting. And I certainly know people that do that. But right at the very start, when I first was thinking, how do I reach this extraordinary diverse audience? And I was looking at LinkedIn, and a very good friend of mine in South Africa said to me, look, if you're going to do this, and I think you should, you want it to be natural, you want it to be authentic, you want to make it a conversation, you want it to be interesting. But most of all, you really want to be you. People will spot it a mile off if you are a corporate robotic voice, sort of tripping out the sort of the standard sort of management speak that people hear sometimes. And so it was really important to me right from the very start that people got a sense of who I am and the passion and the energy that I personally bring to the role, and to sustain that. It's really important to be involved personally. I get messages through LinkedIn all the time. Occasionally they'll be like, I don't know if you monitored this account yourself. And I'm like, yes, I absolutely do. Because that is a really important part of what makes LinkedIn such a powerful platform and a vehicle for me, is that it's not just about staying on top of the people you're already connected to. It's about meeting new people. It's about, frankly, finding out more about people that you're going to go and meet. So the kinds of events that you go to as well. If you know who's going to be in the room, why would you not want to find out as much as you can about them? So, it can really help with those icebreakers for people who are networking in person. It can help with follow-up. The personal messaging thing has been amazing and has helped me so many times when I've had a call from a minister who said, do we know somebody in this company? And I'm like, possibly. And then so you go into LinkedIn and you realize that, either you're directly connected to somebody who can take you to who you need, or you find your way. And so it's an amazingly powerful network. All of that said, I have to recognize that this is also a team effort. And so, I simply don't have the time to produce all the content that goes up onto my posts. And so, the content producers and the marketing and the comms team that I have here are brilliant. We brainstorm all the time. What are the issues? How do we best get those messages across? What kind of visuals, what kind of imagery, what kind of recordings do we want to do? How do we keep innovating and adapting thing to keep things fresh and to kind of keep the audience interested. The team here are an amazing help to enable me to do more than simply say in direct prose, I've been here and I've done that, or I think about this. But I do think that personal involvement really matters and helps shape and frame the look and feel of what's coming out there.
As we wrap up, Steve Taylor shares his philosophy on showing genuine care for team members through LinkedIn engagement. This approach exemplifies how leaders can use the platform to build a positive organizational culture. I just want to say LinkedIn is a good extension of sort of the way a leader shows up authentically. And something, you've done twice just in this short conversation is shouted out specific team members for something that they've done. And that's something that I noticed that you're really good about doing on LinkedIn. And it's a really powerful way that, you don't always have the opportunity to do that in person with somebody or, on a podcast, but having the opportunity to tag somebody, to mention them, to, whether it's their work anniversary or whether they have an achievement, that builds a culture that is warm and supportive. And I think we all would agree that having a positive culture in an organization is essential for success. And so I just wanted to mention that because it's something I've seen you do there, but it's clearly part of just the way you show up authentically because you've just done it a couple times today.
And thank you. I have a quote I always say, and this, I've told you this quote, you've heard me say it in trainings, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And I'll just say it again. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And so just taking that moment to even just remember, you don't have to remember their kids' names. You don't have to remember their work anniversary, but knowing something about them, remembering what department they're in, commenting on a work anniversary and realizing it was their work anniversary. Those things matter to people because we spend a lot of waking hours with our coworkers, sometimes more during the week with them than our family. And as I mentioned, people are alone a lot more. So like that engagement, either through Teams chat, LinkedIn posts, commenting on LinkedIn, it matters because it just creates that humanity and that creation of that you're actually paying attention, that you care what they're doing, that they're not just out there, by themselves in the wind. One of our events we had great walks this past weekend, and one of our walks, Nashville, went way over goal. And Lauren Clayton, our executive director, commented on all of the statistics from our event, and she took time to do that. And I commented, for example, on that one because she took time to post so her volunteers and patients knew what they had done together collectively. But I wanted her to see that senior leaders at the organization also noticed, and it's important to what she's doing. And so those kind of things it's not just about being out there and knocking on doors and getting money, but making sure people realize that we know they're working hard, that our volunteers are out there who are giving their time freely to the organization. That I comment on volunteers all the time and researchers and people are doing stuff for us, because without them and the time that they give, we wouldn't be able to do as much as we do. And I want them to realize that I see that as well.
There you have it. Valuable insights from 4 influential leaders on leveraging LinkedIn for leadership and influence. Remember, authenticity, engagement, and showing genuine care are key to making the most of this powerful platform. Thanks for tuning in to Chief Influencer. I'm Anthony Schopp, and we'll see you next time. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Chief Influencer, a production of Social Driver and the Communications Board. If you know a leader who should be featured as a Chief Influencer, please nominate them at chiefinfluencer.org. For show notes and more, visit us at chiefinfluencer.org or follow Chief Influencer on LinkedIn. Until next time,